Hi, I'm Katie Boyko from PeptideMatchIO. We're here with Peptide Perspectives. Two of my colleagues today, Chris and Terry, and we're going to talk about the FDA hearing that we just had last week and kind of break it down and what it means for us, what we think about it, and kind of start that conversation over again. And we're really excited about the news. 6 of the 7 peptides were voted yes by the panel. And so, Chris, can you share why that means so much to us at PeptideMatch.io?
Well, here at PeptideMatch.io, what it means to us is the fact that this is really what's pushing for, the user to come to a provider. And what our hub does is really, one, not only educates our user, that is looking for peptides or peptide therapy, but also, pushes them and guides them into finding the right provider in their area through our platform.
So BPC 157, a very popular peptide on the gray market, now has going to go through a process to hopefully be FDA approved. How likely do you guys think that this is actually going to get approved? Do you think the FDA is going to push back on it? Not just that one, but any of the 6 that they were voted yes on.
So I think like you said, it's not FDA approved, but I think the success through the panel is a real indicator, a real signal, and seems promising that it can be approved, right? It's one of the most talked about peptides in the industry, and I'd say probably one of the most used peptides, whether gray market or previously in athletic communities for a long time. So again, I think it's just real promising. It's a promising signal that could end up in a favorable spot.
Yeah, so in the hearing too, I thought it was really interesting. Speaking of, we want people to use a provider. That's like the whole goal. Safety is number one. And that seemed to be the theme that I heard the whole time. And it was really exciting to hear that everyone who voted yes, they were voting because they wanted safety for the patient. They didn't want them to get them from the gray market, peptides from the gray market. They want them to use a provider. And I think it's funny because a lot of people I talk to that take peptides don't even talk to their providers about it. And so they're, having their provider help them with health concerns and they don't know what they're actually doing. So do you think this will allow people to be more transparent with their providers as they talk to them?
No. Um,
No?
just to kind of just throw that out there, and and it's kind of interesting because this was a question that we had at a networking event last night.
Mm.
This exact same question. And the fact that people are still don't always like to even tell their provider that they're taking aspirin or Tylenol. Sometimes now we're talking throwing peptides in there.
Yeah.
It's because they're always afraid of what their doctor is going to tell them. And it's just what they have to do is just understand they're educating their provider on what they're taking, and it's going to help the treatment protocols that they're going to go through. Providers are becoming more and more educated within the peptide industry. Some are not, but the ones who truly are seeing that this is kind of becoming a way of life for people are starting to educate themselves. So they're understanding what they're taking. And we want everybody and urge everybody to make sure to tell their providers, what types of peptides and any medication that they're on, and not keep it a secret because, some of those things, if they do not do that, can harm them in the long run because you've got things, interacting with each other or contradicting each other and can cause problems down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I'm that person, right? So I started this journey a long time ago, long time before this company was in place, our company, PeptideMatch.io. Let me say that again. It's funny you should say that because I'm one of those people. I was in this space long before PeptideMatch.io existed, and I think, wow, what a crazy amount of time it would have saved me to go have these conversations and find a peptide provider. But in this scenario, I myself went to my doctor after being on peptides, and the first appointment, I didn't say anything. Because I was going to, I had it all documented. Here's what I'm on. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what's, the data around what has changed. And I just chickened out for that reason, Chris, that you said. I just didn't want to hear what she may or may not say. And so my wife was not real happy about it, gave me a bit of what for. So the next appointment, I handed her my data sheet. Here's what I'm taking, here's whatever. And it was prompted by, she asked about a certain medication. If I was taking it, how's it going? That's why we're here. I said, well, I'm not taking it. I put it in the refrigerator. I'm taking these peptides. And she went, oh. And through the conversation, she was basically surprised at the success that I had seen doing this peptide protocol that I was on. And she asked some questions about where I was getting them and whatnot. And the funny thing was, she ended, and this is a traditional medical facility, she ended with, well, myself and a couple of nurse practitioners have just gone through peptide certification so we can start offering peptide therapy. What I think this means for the industry is traditional medicine, doctors understand what this can do for their patients, right? So I think they're starting to realize, they have to figure out how to play in this space.
Yeah.
Because patients are going to go do this. Everyone's going to go figure out how to do it themselves. So, like you said, Katie, how would they do that in a safe manner from a doctor's perspective? Hey, do no harm, right? Is in their
Yeah.
mantra. Can they facilitate that for their patients and retain their patients?
So I'm really hopeful for everyone who wants to access these peptides in a safe, not buying it from someone they don't know where it's coming from. And I think that it's going to get approved. Do you guys think that there's any hesitation? What would cause, I think there's so much in social conversation about these peptides. I think there's a lot of pressure from society for them to just keep this momentum forward. After they voted, there was a ton of press on it. Do you guys think that there's other factors that might hold them back from approving it?
Oh, absolutely. If we're going to open that can of worms, um, yeah, there is. And what people know, and everybody knows, is the FDA is very political and money motivated. And what I mean by political is the lobbyists that are out there, which is going to be the big pharma, really push and prod as to what direction to go. Biggest thing to understand is through the advisory committee, what they voted on, one were certain aspects of the peptide, but all of it was 503A. It was not 503B. B being bulk, which is going to be your big pharma. So FDA really caters to them in making sure that those things get taken care of. 503As are regulated by the state. Do they still have to follow FDA rules? Yes, but they're more regulated by the state than anything. So does the FDA really care about the peptides? Yes, but are they incentivized or pushed or pressured to get them done because it's a state thing? No. It's probably a 50-50 as to whether or not it really goes anywhere or gets any steam. But we'll see what happens.
And it sounds like it's going to take months to actually go through all that process. It sounds like they had a bunch, like they have a lot to do before they have to have processes in place and all that good stuff. So another thing that I thought was really interesting was that this is the first time I've ever watched one of these hearings before. So I will admit that. So this is kind of me new. And I didn't realize, it's kind of interesting. They all said, some of the people that were in the audience that were speaking and talking about experience. And, at one point, the big argument was there's no research, there's not enough human trials, all that good stuff from the FDA. And people a lot of them who voted no to it too said that as well. And people in the audience kind of, chimed back saying that they disagreed with that point, that they have a bunch of research on it. Doctors, a lot of physicians coming forward and saying these examples of their patients, they're seeing tremendous improvements from using these peptides and how they've helped with different conditions. I found it interesting that even in those times where they kind of, I want to say, snapped back, the FDA didn't even respond to that or acknowledge it because they have to be so scripted, it felt like. Did you guys feel like it was very scripted and they couldn't even talk about their opinion? I don't know. I was disappointed that I couldn't hear their opinion. I wanted to just pull one away and say, what do you really think? I don't know. Did you guys feel that way?
Yeah, I felt like, again, like Chris said, their hands were very tied on what they could and couldn't say and how they could respond.
Yeah.
If you look at what they presented, they being the FDA, against what the doctors and the proponents of it presented, is very different, right? Because you heard testimonies and stories, thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of examples of where, let's just say BPC, we'll use BPC 157, right? Because it's been around for decades. They talked about that one a lot. I was really watching that one close, but their answer was, oh, this one time, caused inflammation whatever because of the way it was, swollen leg. I can't remember
Yeah.
Basically, I think Chris, you and I watched it and we said, oh, that means a bruise. They didn't use the word contusion. They used some other word. And I thought, well, that's just an even fancier word for a bruise. But again, you heard countless people stand up. The one that stands out most to me was the lady that talked about her own experience with endometriosis and how BPC 157 in 2 weeks took that pain away. So that pain, inflammation, all of those things. And then she talked about passionate, which she was about helping other women. And I think she was going to med school. So it's just stories like that over and over that you hear about where BPC 157 has had a positive effect. And I want to say it was, gosh, I hope I'm quoting this right. There was somebody who said that they had called, I don't know how many emergency rooms. Chris, you remember it was like they called 30,000 hospitals or ERs to see if there was even one case of somebody being admitted for the use of it. I think it was BP 157. They couldn't find one, not one. So again, the data's different. They say there's no human trials. It's not enough. I just kind of question that because it's been used for decades by the athletic communities.
Yeah, and you've got them sitting there talking about that there's no data. There's no human studies. COVID-19 vaccine didn't have any human studies either. So we just decided to push that through FDA approvals and get emergency approvals in a matter of days and weeks. But yet we have things that change people's lives. And we have people within the FDA going, oh, there's not enough study. There's not enough human study. But yet there are thousands of pages, that are out there. There are hundreds of human studies on almost all of these. They have to look outside of the blinders that they have, because as an example, most all of these peptides have been studied inside of other countries. And I know we don't like to use their data because, oh, they're not our friends and allies. But they've been doing studies on these for decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another argument that I thought was interesting is, social influence on making medical decisions based on what the media and what people are saying on social media. I think that for me as a marketer, it's kind of the love-hate I have with it. It's made my job really hard to do, but at the same time, the change that we can make through that by people just talking about it and pushing it and knowing that it's important to people and that's things that they care about truly. And all the stories that people can say, someone from North Carolina can share their story on how this peptide changed their life. And now we can access that. So I think it's very interesting for me to hear that as an argument, but the other time just realizing, wow, if we didn't have this, then we wouldn't even know about this. So it kind of, that good and bad about it, so.
Well, just think about the social response during COVID. Everybody needs to wear a mask. Everybody needs to get vaccinated, whether it's driven federally or not. There was a huge social element around that, right? And like Chris said, that thing was that thing. The COVID vaccine was approved through the FDA through emergency response to pandemic.
Yeah.
And, when I think about this, and of course, it'll probably be a controversial statement, but at the end of the day, why wouldn't they look at some of these things, whether it's some of the Retta, TrueTide, or some of these other ones? I know that one's not on the list, but why wouldn't they look at that to help solve a pandemic of being obesity, right? Because obesity, diabetes, it has proven cases where it has helped or if not solved that. So why isn't that an emergency pandemic? I mean, think of the numbers around that. So I just kind of look at that and again, go back to the whole, is it a money thing? Is it a power thing?
Yeah.
I mean, just look at it. But I think the social piece of this peptide kind of industry shift, I think it's going to push and I'm optimistic it'll have a positive effect.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. I definitely, coming into this industry and kind of seeing it move so quickly, I think it is a lot driven by the social influence that's had on it. So that's
7 months ago, I didn't know what a peptide was.
Now it's everywhere.
And now it's everywhere. You can't turn a page on any of your social media outlets and not see peptide. This does it, whether it's an infographic, whether it's a video, whether it's somebody talking about a certain compound and what it does. You can't not see it.
Comedians talking about it in their skits. I love it.
Oh yeah, Aaron Berg is a big comedian, peptide user, 100%.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I didn't really think much about peptides till I started here. And in my medical background, I mean, I dealt with peptides all the time and never really paid any attention to it in any fashion.
Yeah.
And there's like, Oh yeah, I guess that was.
Yeah,
You
that
know,
insulin.
so but yet
Yeah.
I sit here and talk about doctors not educating themselves, and I was in that same boat.
Yeah, yeah. I find it interesting too. Ashley, one of our medical professional on our boards that we have, she's always, it's the molecular level and all that stuff. And it's just interesting to hear all of the details on how they work and everything, and knowing that it's kind of crazy that something is even at this point, I guess, that's not like it's helping from the molecular level, it's not from an organ level. Do you guys think that being able to heal ourselves and not have, could this help cost of medical care that I'm, later on, or, is that something that kind of everyone says a conspiracy theory?
Well,
I don't know. Do you think that has any impact? I don't know.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I will say follow the money, right? Some of the pushback from the FDA
Absolutely.
is through a lobby for the
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals, from the lobby to the pharmaceutical companies, because peptides are naturally occurring amino acids in the body.
Yeah.
They can't be patented. And so where's the money, right? The
Yeah.
money's not, they can't make money on it. That's why part of the reasons why probably there's no studies on it, because no one's going to go study it. Big Pharma is obviously interested in selling drugs and I would say treating symptoms,
Yeah.
where peptides from a molecular level or cellular level, like you said, you can actually treat the problem
Yeah.
or prevent the problems. Countless stories of folks that were diabetic that went on certain peptides and all of a sudden their blood sugars normalized
Mm-hmm.
based on a certain couple of compounds that function at the cellular mitochondria level to go fix insulin resistance.
Yep.
Yeah.
They don't want that, because now how are they going to sell metformin or glipizide or Farxiga or any of the other ones you hear about?
Yeah.
Yeah, and to kind of just touch one more time on what you're saying is, they don't want the peptides are something your body produces anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And all those amino chains and turning them into the things that we're taking, so all we're doing is reteaching our body how to heal itself. And they don't want that,
Mm-hmm.
because then the billions of dollars they make every year will go away.
Yeah.
So I'll stay, again, not a conspiracy theorist. However,
Okay.
are they interested in fixing the real problems, or is it just a state of managed
Yeah.
decline?
Yep.
And I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, but at the end of the day, that's the way I personally look at it.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody will comment it down below and let you know that.
I hope so. Please do, because I'd
Yeah.
love to hear comments. I would love to hear comments, feedback, thoughts,
Yeah.
because we're just having this open conversation about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great, that's why we're here, is to have an open conversation. So we encourage everyone to join in the conversation in the comments below, or follow us on social media so we can talk more about it. We'd love to engage. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the beginning of our journey on this podcast. We're going to have a lot more to come. We're really excited about it. But just to get the conversation started and hear what people have to say. So, yeah,
Yeah.
thanks so much.
Right. Thanks.